What if the greatest force shaping your life is not fate, not other people, not the circumstances you have been blaming, but the quiet voice inside your own mind? The one that speaks to you from the moment you wake up until the moment you close your eyes at night. The voice that remembers every embarrassment, every rejection, every failure, every moment you were made to feel small. The voice that says, "Be careful. Don't expect too much. You're probably not good enough. People like you don't change. You've always been this way." And because you have heard it for so long, you stopped questioning it. You stopped noticing it. You stopped asking whether it was telling the truth. You simply obeyed. You built your life around its warnings. You lowered your expectations. You abandoned dreams before they had the chance to grow. You pushed people away before they could hurt you. You prepared yourself for disappointment before life had even unfolded. And slowly, the words that once passed through your mind became the walls of the world you lived in. But what if those words were never the truth? What if they were only echoes? Echoes of old wounds, echoes of fear, echoes of voices you inherited from moments when you forgot how valuable you truly were. The Buddha taught that the mind is always practicing. Every thought you repeat is a lesson. Every story you revisit is a seed. Every sentence you whisper to yourself becomes an instruction for the person you are becoming, which means something both terrifying and beautiful. If you have repeated fear, you can learn peace. If you have practiced self-rejection, you can practice self-respect. If you have taught your mind to expect darkness, you can teach it to recognize light again, because the same repetition that built your suffering can also build your freedom. So tonight, don't listen to this message as a stranger searching for answers. Listen as someone standing at the doorway of a new life, because by the end of this video, you may realize that you were never doomed to remain the person pain convinced you to be. You may discover that the voice in your head is not your master. It is your student, and it has been becoming whatever you repeatedly teach it to believe. The question is, what story have you been rehearsing? And, more importantly, if that story has been shaping your life, what could happen if you finally chose to tell yourself a different one? Because the words you repeat become the life you live. And perhaps today is the day you stop repeating the story that wounded you and begin speaking the one that heals you. You become the words you speak to yourself in silence. Most people think identity is something they discover. They spend years asking questions like, who am I? What is my purpose? What kind of person am I meant to be? They search through achievements, relationships, careers, titles. They hope that one day they will finally arrive at a clear answer. But often, identity is not discovered. It is repeated. You slowly become the person you believe yourself to be. And you believe yourself to be the person you hear about most often. For many people, that voice is not kind. Maybe someone once told you that you were difficult, too emotional, too sensitive, too quiet, too weak, not smart enough, not attractive enough, too different, too much, or somehow never enough. Perhaps they said these things in anger. Perhaps they were trying to control you. Perhaps they were speaking from their own pain, or perhaps they never realized the weight their words carried. But as children, we rarely question the voices around us. We absorb them. We trust them. We build ourselves around them. When someone repeatedly tells a child, "You are careless," the child eventually stops saying, "I made a careless mistake." Instead, they begin to believe, "I am a careless person." When someone hears, "You never do anything right," enough times, they stop seeing mistakes as part of being human. They start seeing themselves as fundamentally flawed. The voice of others slowly becomes the voice within. And one day, You no longer remember where the story began. You simply call it who I am. You stopped saying, I made a mistake. Instead, you began saying, I am a failure. You stopped saying, I'm struggling right now. Instead, you began saying, there is something wrong with me. You stopped saying, I feel afraid. Instead, you began saying, I am weak. You stopped saying, this relationship hurt me. Instead, you began saying, I'm impossible to love. Do you see what happened? A moment became an identity. A wound became a definition. A disappointment became a destiny. A temporary season became a permanent story. You had one bad experience speaking in public, and suddenly you became the shy person. You experienced rejection, and suddenly you became the unlovable person. You failed once, and suddenly you became the person who never succeeds. The mind has a habit of turning experiences into identities. It takes passing storms and convinces you they are the climate of your entire life. But the Buddha taught something radically different. He taught that everything changes. Everything. Thoughts change. Emotions change. Circumstances change. Relationships change. The body changes. The seasons change. Even mountains slowly change over time. And if everything in existence is constantly changing, why would you believe that the worst thing you once thought about yourself must remain true forever? You are not a fixed object. You are not a statue carved from stone. You are not trapped inside one version of yourself for the rest of your life. You are constantly becoming. The person you were 10 years ago is not the person reading these words today. You have survived things you once thought would break you. You have learned lessons you never expected to learn. You have changed your opinions, outgrown old dreams, developed new strengths, healed wounds you thought would last forever. Even now, there are parts of you quietly evolving beneath the surface. The tragedy is not that people said painful things about you. The tragedy is when you continue saying those same things long after they have left, long after the teacher is gone, long after the relationship ended, long after the criticism stopped. You keep the voice alive. You become both the prisoner and the guard. You defend limitations that were never truly yours. You argue for your weaknesses. You cling to old labels because they have become familiar. You say, this is just how I am. I've always been this way. I can't change. I'll never be confident. I'll never be happy. Without realizing it, you worship an outdated version of yourself. You remain loyal to identities built during your moments of pain. You protect stories written by fear. You live according to descriptions that no longer fit the person you are becoming. But familiarity is not truth. Just because you have repeated something for years does not make it real. A lie repeated 1,000 times is still a lie. And a painful story repeated for decades is still only a story. The beautiful truth is this: the voice in your head was learned, which means it can be relearned. The beliefs you inherited can be questioned. The labels you accepted can be released. The stories you rehearsed can be rewritten. Imagine how different your life would feel if you stopped introducing yourself through your wounds. Imagine waking up without immediately reminding yourself of everything that is wrong with you. Imagine speaking to yourself the way you would speak to someone you deeply love. Patiently, honestly, gently, encouraging growth instead of predicting failure. Because the words you speak to yourself are never neutral. They are planting seeds. Every day, in the quiet moments nobody else can hear, you are teaching your mind what to believe. You are teaching it what to expect. You are teaching it who you think you are. If you repeatedly say, I always fail, your mind prepares for defeat. If you repeatedly say, nothing good ever happens to me, your mind begins searching for evidence to prove it. If you repeatedly say, I am broken, You stop noticing the parts of you that are healing, but imagine repeating different truths. I am learning. I can grow. I have survived difficult seasons before. I am not defined by my worst moments. I can begin again. At first, your mind may resist. It may not believe you. That is okay, because the same way fear was learned through repetition, hope can be learned through repetition too. Confidence can be learned. Peace can be learned. Self-respect can be learned. Compassion can be learned. A new identity can be nurtured. Slowly, patiently, one thought at a time, one word at a time, one choice at a time. Identity is not carved into stone. It is shaped through repetition. And what repetition created, awareness can transform. You are not the cruel names you were called. You are not the mistakes you made. You are not the fears you carry. You are not the worst day of your life. You are not the story pain wrote about you. You are something far greater, a living, changing human being with the ability to awaken, to heal, to choose differently, to become differently. And perhaps the most powerful transformation of all begins with this simple realization. You do not have to keep speaking to yourself in the language of your old suffering. You can choose a new voice. You can choose a new story. And little by little, that new story can become a new life. The mind turns repetition into identity without your permission. Imagine walking through a field covered with tall grass. The first time you walk through it, the journey is difficult. You have to push the grass aside. You have to decide where to place each step. You move slowly because the path does not yet exist. But if you walk that same route every single day, something begins to change. The grass bends. The earth beneath your feet becomes firm. The path grows wider, clearer, easier to follow. Eventually, you no longer have to think about where to go. Your feet move there automatically, without effort, without awareness, without choice. Your mind works in exactly the same way. Every thought you repeat creates familiarity. Every belief you revisit strengthens a pathway. Every emotion you rehearse becomes easier to access. Every fear you entertain becomes quicker to appear. At first, these patterns seem harmless. You worry once in a while. You criticize yourself occasionally. You compare yourself to others from time to time. You expect the worst only after life disappoints you. But repetition changes everything. What was once occasional becomes habitual. What was once a habit becomes automatic. And what becomes automatic begins to feel like who you are. At first, you say, I've been anxious lately. Then eventually you say, I am an anxious person. At first, you think, I don't feel confident today. Then, eventually, you decide, I've never been a confident person. At first, you tell yourself, this relationship hurt me. Then, years later, you believe. People always leave. Can you see how quietly this happens? The mind slowly transforms repeated experiences into identities. Not because they are true, but because they are familiar. The mind does not ask, is this helping me? It asks, have I been here before? Because familiarity feels safe, even when it hurts, even when it limits you, even when it steals your peace. Human beings often return to familiar suffering because uncertainty feels frightening. This is why some people sabotage happiness the moment it arrives, not because they want pain, but because peace feels unfamiliar. Chaos feels normal. Calm feels suspicious. Some people finally meet someone who genuinely loves them. Someone patient, kind, consistent. But instead of relaxing into that love, they become anxious. They wait for abandonment. They search for signs that something is wrong. They test the relationship. They push the person away, not because they do not want love, but because rejection feels more familiar than acceptance. Some people finally achieve the success they dreamed of, yet instead of enjoying it, they tell themselves they do not deserve it. They expect failure. They fear losing everything. They shrink themselves because struggle feels more familiar than ease. Others become uncomfortable when life becomes peaceful. Silence feels strange. Rest feels lazy. Joy feels temporary. So they create problems where none exist. They overthink. They assume. They worry. They prepare for storms that have not yet arrived. Because part of them has learned that peace cannot be trusted. The mind always returns to what it has practiced. Not necessarily what is healthy, not necessarily what is true, but what is familiar. This is why mindfulness matters so deeply. Because what you practice grows stronger. Fear grows stronger. Patience grows stronger. Anger grows stronger. Gratitude grows stronger. Compassion grows stronger. Resentment grows stronger. Hope grows stronger. Bitterness grows stronger. Whatever you repeatedly feed begins to shape the landscape of your inner world. Think about someone learning to play an instrument. The first notes sound awkward. The fingers move slowly. Mistakes happen constantly. But with repetition, the impossible becomes natural. The same principle applies to the mind. You have been practicing being yourself your entire life. You have been practicing the way you react, the way you think, the way you speak to yourself, the way you interpret other people's actions, the way you respond to disappointment, the way you deal with uncertainty. Without realizing it, you have been rehearsing certain versions of yourself every day. Perhaps you have practiced self-doubt for years. Perhaps you have practiced expecting rejection. Perhaps you have practiced believing you are not enough. And because you practiced them for so long, they began to feel permanent. But here is the beautiful truth. Anything practiced can be practiced differently. The mind that learned fear can learn trust. The mind that learned criticism can learn compassion. The mind that learned hopelessness can learn possibility. The mind that learned chaos can learn peace. The mind is not fixed. It is trainable. The Buddha often compared the mind to something that requires careful cultivation. Like a garden. If you neglect it, weeds grow naturally. You do not have to work hard to become trapped in unconscious habits. They grow on their own. But if you wish to grow peace, wisdom, and compassion, you must nurture them intentionally. You must water them daily, patiently, consistently. This is why small moments matter more than people realize. The way you respond to yourself after making a mistake matters. The way you speak to yourself in the mirror matters. The thoughts you repeat before falling asleep matter. The stories you tell yourself after disappointment matter. Because transformation rarely happens through one dramatic decision. It happens through repetition. One kind thought. Repeated. One compassionate response. Repeated. One moment of awareness. Repeated. One interrupted pattern. Repeated. Little by little, a new path begins to form. At first, it feels unnatural, uncomfortable, even false. Your mind may resist. It may pull you back toward familiar suffering, back toward old stories, back toward the identity you have rehearsed for years. Be patient. The old path was not built in a day. It was built through thousands of repeated steps. The new path deserves the same patience. Every time you choose understanding over self-hatred, you are creating a new pathway. Every time you choose gratitude over constant complaint, you strengthen something beautiful within you. Every time you pause before believing a fearful thought, you loosen the grip of old conditioning. Every time you return your attention to the present moment, you teach your mind another way to live. The mind is always learning, always adapting, always becoming. Even now, even as you listen to these words, You are shaping yourself through repetition. The question is not whether repetition is changing you. It already is. The real question is this: what are you rehearsing every day? Are you rehearsing fear, or courage, shame, or compassion, hopelessness, or possibility? Because every repeated thought becomes another step down a path, and eventually the paths you walk most often become the places you call home. So, choose carefully what you practice. Choose carefully what you repeat. Because day by day, thought by thought, you are building the inner world you will eventually live inside. And the most powerful truth of all is this: you are not condemned to repeat the old path forever. At any moment, with awareness, patience, and compassion, you can begin walking in a new direction. And one day, without even realizing it, what once felt impossible will become natural. Peace will feel familiar. Kindness will feel familiar. Self-respect will feel familiar. Hope will feel familiar. And the person you are becoming will no longer be shaped by unconscious repetition. It will be shaped by conscious choice. Every fear you rehearse teaches the mind how to suffer. One painful thought appears, then another, then another. At first, it seems harmless. A simple worry, a passing fear, a memory you did not ask for, a question that enters your mind without warning. What if I fail? What if they leave me? What if I embarrass myself? What if I make the wrong decision? What if something terrible happens? Everyone experiences thoughts like these. The Buddha never taught that wise people never have fearful thoughts. He understood that thoughts naturally arise in the human mind. Fear visits everyone. Doubt visits everyone. Uncertainty visits everyone. The problem begins when you stop seeing these thoughts as visitors and start treating them as prophets. You believe them. You obey them. You rehearse them again and again and again. A single thought becomes a story. The story becomes a habit. The habit becomes suffering. You replay the same conversation from 3 years ago. You imagine what you should have said, how you should have responded, how you could have avoided embarrassment. You relive the moment repeatedly, even though the people involved have long moved on with their lives. You lie awake at night creating arguments that never happen. You prepare speeches for conflicts that may never exist. You imagine losing people who are still beside you. You picture disasters before reality has even had the chance to unfold. You suffer through events that have not happened, and sometimes never will. Without realizing it, you begin fighting wars that only exist inside your own mind. This is one of the greatest ways human beings create unnecessary suffering. Not because pain is imagined. Real pain exists. Loss exists. Disappointment exists. Heartbreak exists. Illness exists. The Buddha never denied this truth, but he also recognized another truth. Much of our suffering comes not only from life itself. It comes from the stories we repeatedly build around life. We suffer once because something painful happened. Then we suffer 100 more times because we keep reopening the wound. Imagine someone cuts their hand. The wound begins healing, but every single day they scratch it open again and again. Eventually, the injury lasts much longer than it needed to. Many people do this emotionally. Someone rejected them years ago. Yet every day they repeat, "I wasn't enough." Someone betrayed them once. Yet every day they repeat, "No one can ever be trusted." They failed at something important. Yet every day they repeat, "I always ruin everything." A painful experience becomes a lifelong identity because it is rehearsed repeatedly. The mind starts believing, "This happened before, so it will happen again. This person hurt me, so everyone will hurt me. I failed once, so failure defines me." Slowly, fear stops feeling like fear. It begins to feel like wisdom. You tell yourself, I'm just being realistic. I'm protecting myself. I'm preparing for the worst. But often, what you call preparation is simply fear wearing the mask of intelligence. You are not protecting yourself. You are imprisoning yourself. You stop applying for opportunities because you assume rejection. You stop opening your heart because you assume abandonment. You stop chasing dreams because you assume failure. You stop trusting people because you assume betrayal. Your life becomes smaller, not because reality demanded it, but because fear convinced you that safety exists only inside limitation. The body also pays a price for these rehearsed fears. The mind and body are deeply connected. When you imagine danger repeatedly, your body responds as if danger is present. Your chest tightens, your shoulders tense, your breathing becomes shallow, your stomach twists, your heart beats faster. Stress hormones flood your system. You become exhausted from fighting invisible battles. You wake up tired. You struggle to rest. You lose the ability to enjoy peaceful moments because your mind is constantly scanning for threats. Many people call this adulthood. They say, this is just life. This is normal. But being trapped in endless fear was never meant to be your natural state. You were not born worrying about every possible disaster. You learned it, thought by thought, fear by fear, story by story. Which means something beautiful. If suffering can be practiced, peace can also be practiced. If fear can become familiar, calm can become familiar. If overthinking can become automatic, presence can become automatic. But first, you must learn one of the most liberating truths in Buddhist wisdom. A thought is not a fact. A thought is not an order. A thought is not your identity. A thought is simply an event happening within awareness. Clouds pass through the sky. Birds fly overhead. Leaves drift down rivers. Thoughts move through the mind. The sky does not become the storm. The river does not become the leaf. And you do not become every thought that passes through your awareness. You can notice fear without becoming fear. You can notice anger without becoming anger. You can notice sadness without becoming sadness. You can notice doubt without surrendering your entire life to it. Mindfulness teaches us to pause, to observe, to gently say, there is fear. Instead of, I am fear, there is worry. Instead of, my worry predicts the future, there is sadness. Instead of, this sadness is all I will ever know. This small shift changes everything, because awareness creates space, and within that space, freedom begins. You realize that not every fearful thought deserves your trust. Not every worst-case scenario deserves your attention. Not every mental story deserves another rehearsal. You no longer feed every fire. You stop arguing with every shadow. You stop chasing every frightening possibility. You become more selective about what you water inside your own mind. Because whatever you repeatedly rehearse becomes stronger. If you rehearse disaster every day, the mind becomes skilled at suffering. If you rehearse resentment every day, the heart becomes skilled at bitterness. If you rehearse self-hatred every day, the soul forgets its own worth. But if you rehearse gratitude, the mind begins noticing blessings. If you rehearse courage, fear slowly loses its authority. If you rehearse compassion, the harsh inner voice softens. If you rehearse presence, peace starts feeling familiar. Healing does not always begin with changing your circumstances. Sometimes healing begins when you stop repeating the stories that keep reopening old wounds. When you stop introducing fear as truth. When you stop assuming that your thoughts know the future. When you stop worshipping every voice inside your head. The Buddha taught that pain is part of being human. But unnecessary suffering often grows from attachment. Attachment to thoughts. Attachment to stories. Attachment to fears that ask to be believed without question. Freedom begins the moment you notice the pattern. The moment you realize, I have been rehearsing this fear for years. I have been feeding this story every day. I have been preparing for disasters that never arrived. And perhaps, for the first time, you choose differently. You take a breath. You let the thought come. You let the thought go. You refuse to build a home inside every passing storm, because your mind is always learning. The question is, are you teaching it how to suffer, or are you teaching it how to return to peace? Every fear you rehearse teaches the mind how to suffer, but every moment of awareness teaches the mind another way to live. And perhaps the greatest act of courage is not controlling every thought that enters your mind. It is refusing to give every fearful thought the power to decide who you become. You are not your worst fear. You are not your darkest thought. You are not every story your anxious mind has ever told you. You are the awareness that notices them, the presence that witnesses them, the wisdom that can choose again. And that choice, repeated gently over time, has the power to transform your entire life. Compassion rewrites the inner script that criticism never could. Many people spend their entire lives believing that if they are hard enough on themselves, they will finally become better. They think self-criticism is discipline. They think shame is motivation. They think harshness creates growth. So they become their own strictest judge, their own harshest teacher, their own greatest enemy. Every mistake becomes another reason to attack themselves. Every failure becomes evidence that they are not enough. Every weakness becomes proof that they are falling behind. The moment something goes wrong, the inner voice immediately appears. You should have known better. Why do you always do this? You never get anything right. Look at everyone else. Why can't you be like them? You'll never change. You'll never be enough. And because this voice has been present for so long, many people stop questioning it. They assume it is wisdom. They assume it is truth. They assume it is the voice of responsibility. But pause for a moment and ask yourself something honest. Has that voice ever truly brought you peace? Has constantly insulting yourself healed your wounds? Has shame ever taught you how to love yourself? Has self-hatred ever made your heart feel safe enough to grow? For most people, the answer is no. It only creates exhaustion, fear, perfectionism, anxiety, a deep feeling that no matter how much they accomplish, they still fall short. The tragedy is that many people speak to themselves in ways they would never speak to another human being. Imagine a small child learning how to walk. The child takes a few steps, then falls, gets up, falls again. Would you stand over that child and say, "You're pathetic. Look at everyone else walking better than you. You'll never figure this out. Why can't you get it right?" Of course not. You would smile. You would encourage them. You would clap for their effort. You would understand that falling is part of learning. You would say, "It's okay. Try again. You're doing better than you think. I'm proud of you for not giving up." But somewhere along the way, many adults stop offering themselves that same compassion. They expect perfection from a human being who is simply trying to navigate life. They punish themselves for not having all the answers. They shame themselves for being hurt. They criticize themselves for feeling afraid. They judge themselves for not healing fast enough. They forget that they, too, deserve patience. The Buddha taught that compassion is not weakness. Compassion is wisdom, because suffering cannot be healed through more suffering. Hatred cannot heal what hatred created. If your inner world is built entirely on criticism, your nervous system never feels safe. You become afraid of making mistakes, afraid of disappointing others, afraid of trying something new, afraid of failing. Eventually, you stop living fully. You stay small because being perfect feels impossible. And if perfection is the only condition for self-acceptance, then peace remains forever out of reach. Many people believe compassion means lowering standards. It does not. Compassion does not say, "It doesn't matter." Compassion says, "You matter." Compassion does not excuse harmful choices. It simply refuses to confuse mistakes with identity. It says, "You made a mistake." It does not say, "You are a mistake." It says, "You are struggling." It does not say, "You are broken." It says, "You are learning." It does not say, "You are hopeless." This small difference changes everything, because the way you speak to yourself becomes the emotional climate in which you live. If your inner voice is constantly cold, demanding, and unforgiving, your heart never gets a chance to rest. You become a prisoner inside your own mind. You carry an invisible weight everywhere you go. Even your successes bring little joy because the voice inside quickly moves the finish line. You could have done better. It wasn't enough. You don't deserve this. No achievement satisfies a heart that has only learned criticism. No amount of praise from others can silence a voice you continue to strengthen yourself. This is why self-compassion is not selfish. It is necessary. It is healing. It is revolutionary. For some people, compassion feels uncomfortable at first. They hear phrases like, "Be gentle with yourself," and immediately resist. They think, "If I'm kind to myself, I'll become lazy. If I forgive myself, I'll stop growing. If I accept myself, I'll never improve." But notice how fear speaks even here. Compassion does not remove accountability. It changes the energy behind it. Imagine two teachers. One humiliates students whenever they make mistakes. The other corrects them with patience and encouragement. Which teacher creates a safer environment for learning? Which teacher inspires confidence? Which teacher helps people keep trying after failure? The answer is obvious. Human beings flourish in environments of safety, encouragement, and understanding. That truth applies to you as well. The person who needs your compassion most may not be someone outside of you. It may be the version of you that has been carrying impossible expectations for years, the version of you that was never allowed to rest, the version of you that had to grow up too quickly, the version of you that did the best they could with the knowledge they had at the time, the version of you that still believes they have to earn love through perfection. Imagine sitting beside that version of yourself, not to judge them, not to fix them immediately, but simply to understand them. Perhaps you would say, "You've been carrying so much. You didn't deserve everything that happened to you. You were trying to survive. You were doing the best you knew how to do. You don't have to fight yourself anymore." For some people, those words may bring tears because they have spent years waiting to hear compassion from others while never offering it to themselves. Healing often begins with changing the way you respond to your own pain. The next time you fail, notice what voice appears. The next time you feel insecure, pay attention to how you speak to yourself. The next time fear arises, listen carefully. Are you becoming your own enemy or your own refuge? Because every difficult moment offers a choice. You can repeat the old script, the script of shame, the script of criticism, the script of never being enough. Or you can choose a new response, a gentler response, a wiser response, a more human response. You can say, "This is hard, but I can move through it. I don't have everything figured out, and that's okay. I made a mistake, but I can learn. I feel afraid, but fear does not define me. I am healing, and healing takes time." At first, this new voice may feel unfamiliar. You may not fully believe it. That is okay. Remember what you have already learned. The mind believes what it hears repeatedly. For years, you may have rehearsed criticism. You may have strengthened shame. You may have practiced speaking to yourself with cruelty. Compassion will not become natural overnight. But if criticism was learned through repetition, Compassion can also be learned through repetition, one gentle thought, repeated, one forgiving response, repeated, one moment of patience, repeated, until eventually kindness stops feeling foreign, until understanding becomes familiar, until your inner voice no longer sounds like your deepest wound. And perhaps this is one of the most beautiful forms of transformation, not becoming someone new, but becoming someone safe to live with. Because no matter where life takes you, no matter who enters your life, no matter who leaves, you will always be in relationship with yourself. You will hear your own voice more than anyone else's. You will walk beside yourself through every joy and every sorrow. So let that voice become a source of comfort rather than fear. Let it guide instead of punish, encourage instead of condemn, heal instead of wound. Because the voice that transforms your life is rarely the loudest. It is not the voice that shouts. It is not the voice that humiliates. It is not the voice that demands perfection. The voice that truly changes you is the one that quietly says, "You are human. You are learning. You can begin again. You are worthy of patience. You do not have to hate yourself in order to grow." And sometimes the greatest act of love is simply this: choosing to stop speaking to yourself in the language of your old suffering, choosing compassion again and again until the kindness you once searched for in the world finally becomes the home you build within yourself. What you consistently notice becomes the world you live in. One of the greatest powers you possess is something most people rarely think about. It is not intelligence. It is not talent. It is not beauty. It is not money. It is your attention, because your attention quietly decides what kind of life you experience. Every single day, thousands of things compete for your awareness. There are reasons to be grateful and reasons to complain. There are moments of beauty and moments of disappointment. There are people who care about you and people who misunderstand you. There are opportunities and obstacles. There is kindness and cruelty. All of it exists at the same time. Yet no human being can focus on everything at once. So the mind selects. It notices. It filters. It decides what deserves your energy. And over time, whatever receives your attention begins to shape your reality. Imagine two people walking through the same garden. One notices the flowers, the fragrance, the butterflies, the warmth of the sunlight, the gentle movement of the trees. The other notices only the weeds, the fallen leaves, the insects, the cracked stones in the path. Both people walked through the same garden, but they experienced two completely different worlds. This is not because one person's life was perfect and the other person's life was terrible. It is because attention determines experience. The Buddha understood this deeply. He knew that where attention goes, the mind follows. And where the mind repeatedly goes, identity begins to form. Many people unknowingly train themselves to notice only what is wrong. They wake up and immediately focus on problems, the message that was never answered, the bill that needs to be paid, the insecurity they cannot stop thinking about, the criticism someone made years ago, the mistake they regret, the thing they do not have, the person they lost, the future they fear. Little by little, their attention becomes trapped. Without realizing it, they become experts at noticing danger, experts at noticing rejection, experts at noticing disappointment, experts at noticing everything missing from their lives. Eventually, the mind begins to believe, life is against me. Nothing ever works out. There is always something wrong. Even when beautiful moments appear, they pass by unnoticed because the mind has become conditioned to search for darkness. Imagine buying a red car for the first time. Suddenly, you begin seeing red cars everywhere, not because more red cars suddenly appeared, but because your attention became tuned to notice them. The same thing happens emotionally. If you constantly search for evidence that people cannot be trusted, you will notice every disappointment while ignoring countless moments of loyalty. If you constantly search for proof that you are not enough, you will overlook your strengths while magnifying every flaw. If you constantly search for reasons to fear the future, you will miss the peace available in this present moment. The mind becomes skilled at finding whatever it has been trained to seek. This is why some people can receive 10 compliments and remember only one criticism. Why someone can have 100 blessings and spend all day focused on one inconvenience. Why two people can live similar lives while experiencing completely different emotional realities. Their attention has been trained differently. This does not mean you should pretend pain does not exist. Buddhist wisdom is not about denying suffering. The Buddha never said, ignore your pain, smile through everything, act as if life is always beautiful. That is not mindfulness. That is avoidance. Pain deserves acknowledgement. Grief deserves tenderness. Loss deserves compassion. Difficult emotions deserve space. But suffering deepens when pain becomes the only thing you notice, when fear becomes your only teacher, when disappointment becomes the lens through which you interpret your entire life. You begin believing that one painful chapter represents the whole story. But it never does. There are people listening to these words who have survived heartbreak, yet they have also known love. People who have experienced betrayal, yet they have also encountered kindness. People who have faced failure, yet they have also shown incredible resilience. People who have cried in darkness, yet they have also laughed until they forgot their worries. Life contains both. The question is, what are you rehearsing? What are you strengthening? What are you teaching your mind to notice? Attention is like sunlight in a garden. Whatever it touches begins to grow. If all of your energy feeds resentment, resentment grows stronger. If all of your awareness feeds anxiety, anxiety expands. If all of your focus feeds comparison, comparison steals your joy. But if you consistently nourish gratitude, gratitude deepens. If you nourish compassion, compassion expands. If you nourish presence, peace begins to bloom. Think about how often your attention leaves the present moment. You are eating dinner, but your mind is replaying yesterday's mistakes. You are spending time with loved ones, but your thoughts are trapped in tomorrow's fears. You are watching a sunset, but your attention is lost in comparison. You are living your life while mentally existing somewhere else. And because of this, you miss the very moments that make life meaningful. The Buddha repeatedly invited people back to this moment, this breath, this step, this conversation, this sunrise, this cup of tea, this laugh, this ordinary miracle of being alive. Because peace is rarely found in reliving the past, and it is rarely found in controlling the future. Peace is found in learning how to fully arrive where you already are. Notice the warmth of the sunlight on your skin. Notice the sound of rain against the window. Notice the smile of someone you love. Notice the comfort of your own breath. Notice the strength it took to survive everything you have already overcome. These moments may seem small, but a meaningful life is built from small moments noticed deeply. The tragedy is not always that life lacks beauty. Sometimes the tragedy is that we are too distracted to see it, too consumed by worry to experience it, too busy searching for what is missing to appreciate what is present. Mindfulness gently asks, what am I feeding right now? What story am I strengthening? What deserves my attention? Because attention is never neutral. It is always shaping you. It is always teaching your mind what matters. It is always deciding what grows stronger inside your heart. And perhaps this is one of the most empowering truths you can remember. You cannot control everything that happens to you. You cannot control other people's choices. You cannot control the past. You cannot guarantee the future. But you can learn to guide your attention. You can choose where your awareness rests. You can return to the present moment, again and again and again. At first, your mind will wander. That is what minds do. It will run toward old fears, old stories, old habits. Do not punish yourself. Simply notice and gently come back. Come back to this breath. Come back to this moment. Come back to what is real. Each return strengthens peace. Each return trains the mind. Each return reminds you that your attention belongs to you. And eventually something beautiful begins to happen. You stop overlooking the goodness in your life. You begin noticing beauty without guilt, joy without suspicion, Love without immediately expecting loss. You stop waiting for disaster to interrupt every happy moment. You trust yourself enough to be present. You discover that life was never only suffering. It was also wonder, connection, growth, stillness, gratitude, hope. You simply had to learn how to notice, because what you consistently notice becomes the world you live in. And the life you experience tomorrow will be shaped in many ways by what you choose to pay attention to today. So guard your attention carefully. It is one of the most sacred gifts you have, because your attention becomes your experience becomes your story, and your story becomes the life you believe you are living. Choose wisely what you teach your mind to see, for where your attention rests, your life quietly follows. Awareness ends the old story and begins your transformation. Most people imagine transformation as a dramatic event. They picture a single moment that changes everything, a breakthrough, a revelation, a perfect morning when all fear disappears, a day when they suddenly become confident, peaceful, wise, and completely healed. But real transformation rarely looks like that. More often, it begins quietly, almost invisibly. No applause, no fireworks, no dramatic announcement, just awareness. A simple moment of seeing clearly, a moment when you finally notice what has been running your life from behind the scenes. You notice the voice inside your head. You notice the fears you repeat every day. You notice how quickly you criticize yourself. You notice the stories you inherited from painful experiences. You notice the beliefs you accepted without questioning. You notice how often you expect rejection before receiving love. You notice how often you prepare for disaster before life has even unfolded. You notice how often you speak to yourself in the language of fear instead of truth. And in that moment of noticing, something extraordinary happens. You realize, I don't have to continue living this way. This is the gift of awareness. Before awareness, everything feels automatic. You react without thinking. You assume your thoughts are facts. You mistake habits for identity. You believe every story the mind tells you. You keep walking the same path because you never realized there were other paths available. But awareness creates space, and in that space, freedom begins. Before awareness, anger controls your words. After awareness, you pause. Before awareness, fear decides your future. After awareness, you question it. Before awareness, self-criticism feels normal. After awareness, you hear how cruel that voice has become. Before awareness, you repeat inherited stories. After awareness, you ask, is this actually true? Awareness does not instantly erase old habits, but it interrupts them. And interruption is the beginning of transformation. Imagine driving down the same road every day for years. You know every turn, every stop sign, every shortcut. You could travel it with your eyes closed. Then one day someone tells you there is another road, a road that leads somewhere more peaceful, more beautiful, more aligned with who you truly are. You may not know that road yet. It may feel unfamiliar. You may accidentally return to the old route many times, but now you know another path exists. That knowledge changes everything. You can no longer say, I had no choice. Awareness gives you choice. This is why Buddhist wisdom places such importance on awakening, because awakening is not becoming someone else. It is seeing clearly, seeing the patterns, seeing the attachments, seeing the fears, seeing the unconscious ways you have been living. Many people spend years asleep inside their own conditioning. They repeat the same thoughts, choose the same pain, create the same conflicts, chase the same validation, then wonder why life never changes. But awareness gently whispers, look closely. You've been here before. You've told yourself this story before. You've reacted this way before. Are you sure this is the path you want to keep walking? Awareness invites honesty, and honesty is not always comfortable. Sometimes awareness reveals that you have abandoned yourself trying to please others. Sometimes it reveals that you have been using busyness to avoid loneliness. Sometimes it reveals that you have mistaken anxiety for responsibility. Sometimes it reveals that you have built your identity around wounds that were meant to heal, not define you. This can be painful because awakening often involves grieving the person you had to become in order to survive. You realize that some versions of yourself were built from fear: the people pleaser, the perfectionist, the overthinker, the one who always expected rejection, the one who never believed they were enough, the one who kept proving their worth to people who never truly saw them. These versions of you were not created because you were weak. They were created because you were trying to protect yourself. They helped you survive. They carried you through difficult seasons. But survival is not the same as living, and awareness helps you understand that you no longer have to remain loyal to every identity fear created. You can thank those old versions of yourself and still let them go. Because healing is not betraying who you were. Healing is honoring who you are becoming. Many people believe transformation means never struggling again, but that is not true. Transformation does not mean fear never returns. It means fear no longer sits at the head of the table making all your decisions. Transformation does not mean you never experience self-doubt. It means you no longer worship every doubtful thought. Transformation does not mean sadness disappears. It means sadness is held with compassion instead of shame. Transformation is not perfection. It is presence. It is presence. It is choosing awareness over autopilot, again and again and again. The beautiful thing is that transformation happens through small moments. One pause before reacting, one deep breath before speaking, one kind word offered to yourself instead of criticism, one decision not to believe an old story, one moment of gratitude in the middle of an ordinary day, one choice to return your attention to the present moment. These moments seem insignificant, but they change the direction of your life. Because a life is not transformed through one giant leap. A life is transformed through thousands of tiny choices repeated consistently. You choose patience, then choose it again tomorrow. You choose compassion, then choose it again when you make another mistake. You choose presence, then choose it again when your mind drifts into fear. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, your inner world begins to change. The things that once controlled you lose their grip. The fears that once ruled you become easier to question. The harsh inner voice softens. The nervous system relaxes. Peace visits more often. Joy no longer feels suspicious. Love no longer feels impossible. You begin trusting yourself, not because life becomes predictable, but because you discover that you can meet life with awareness. And perhaps one day you will look back and realize something remarkable. You are no longer the person who began this journey, the person who once believed every fearful thought, the person who constantly criticized themselves, the person who searched endlessly for validation, the person who rehearsed suffering every day. That version of you was real, but it was never the whole story. Because beneath the fear, there was always awareness. Beneath the conditioning, there was always wisdom. Beneath the noise, there was always a quiet presence watching everything unfold. The Buddha taught that our deepest nature is not the endless stream of thoughts passing through the mind. We are not every fear. We are not every wound. We are not every label. We are the awareness that notices them, the stillness beneath the storm, the sky behind the clouds, the observer who can choose differently. And once you remember this, something shifts forever. You stop asking, "Lum fees nuan si saw mate, what's wrong with me?" and begin asking, "What old story am I ready to release?" You stop asking, "Why can't I change?" and begin asking, "What small choice can I make today?" You stop waiting for transformation to arrive from outside of you, because you realize transformation has already begun. It began the moment you became aware, the moment you questioned the old script, the moment you noticed the pattern, the moment you chose not to repeat the story that had shaped your suffering. Awareness is where healing begins. Awareness is where freedom begins. Awareness is where the cycle breaks. Because the old story can only survive in unconscious repetition. The moment you see it clearly, its power begins to weaken, and little by little, breath by breath, choice by choice, you stop becoming the person fear expected you to be. You become the person awareness invites you to become. more present, more compassionate, more peaceful, more alive. Not because you became someone new, but because you finally remembered who you were beneath all the noise. And perhaps that is the greatest transformation of all, not finding a new self, but returning home to the self that fear made you forget, the self that was always there, waiting patiently for you to awaken, waiting for you to see clearly, waiting for you to choose again. And from that moment forward, the words you repeat no longer become chains that bind you. They become prayers of healing, seeds of wisdom, acts of compassion, and the beginning of an entirely new life. Perhaps the most beautiful realization of all is this: you were never broken. Stories born from fear, stories shaped by pain, stories inherited from moments when you did not yet know how powerful your own mind truly was. For years, you may have called those stories the truth. You may have believed that you would always be the anxious one, the overthinker, the people pleaser, the one who never feels good enough, the one who always expects the worst. But tonight, maybe you have begun to see something different. The voice inside your head is not the master of your life, and all this time, it has been learning from what you repeatedly teach it. If you teach it fear, it will learn fear. But if you teach it patience, it will learn patience. It will learn compassion. If you teach it hope, it will learn hope. And if you teach it presence, it will guide you back to peace. So be gentle with yourself. You are not trying to erase a lifetime of conditioning overnight. One thought at a time, one breath at a time, one kinder word at a time. Some days you will forget. You will believe old stories. You will speak to yourself in the language of fear. It means you are human, and every moment you become aware again. Every moment you pause. Every moment you choose compassion over criticism, you begin again. That is the path, not perfection, but remembering. Because healing is not becoming someone else. It is returning to the person you were before fear convinced you that you had to be less than who you truly are. You are allowed to outgrow the stories that once protected you. You are allowed to speak to yourself with love. You are allowed to choose peace. And maybe years from now, you will look back at this version of yourself with tears in your eyes. But because you finally stopped being at war with your own mind, you finally became a safe place for your own heart. And that changed everything. If this message found you at the moment you needed it most, let it be a quiet reminder. Pay attention to the words you repeat, because they are shaping the person you are becoming. Choose them with wisdom, choose them with love, and little by little, they will help guide you back home to yourself. If this reflection touched something within you, and you wish to continue walking this path of awareness, healing, and inner freedom, I invite you to become part of our growing family here at Golden Lotus Wisdom. Until we meet again, take care of your mind, protect your inner peace, speak kindly to yourself, and never forget, the words you repeat become the life you live. May your thoughts become gentle, and may you discover that the peace you have been searching for has been quietly waiting inside you all along.